Welcome to Where's My Money? One man, $1 million of debt, one podcast to find a way out.
Welcome to another Rags to Riches episode of Where's My Money. Now, you might recognise the name Al Brown for Depot or Logan Brown or Best Ugly Bagels. What you might not know is how he built those brands and what money, brand and hospitality mean to him now. Today, I sit down with a man who's turned good food and good vibes into seriously successful businesses without ever losing the point of it all. Watch now as I fangirl and fawn over one of my favourite iconic Kiwis. I'm going to try not to fanboy during this whole conversation because I've pointed this out to you in emails before you come in.
When I didn't put two and two together when you sent the email and you said, I don't want to be a fangirl.
Yeah.
Is that a
the saying is a fangirl?
Is a fangirl fanboy? There's not both. There's only one. Because I thought, is Lachlan a woman's name as well or something? Have I missed the beat?
So yeah, Lachlan's our producer who's not actually here. He's on the way to the airport to Melbourne. But we're recording now, so let's crack into it.
Okay.
I thank you so much for coming in. Al Brown, welcome to Where's My Money?
Oh, absolute pleasure to have me here. Not sure, when you emailed me, I wasn't absolutely sure that you got the right person in my business, but I'm here nevertheless.
Well, here's the thing. I know it's a money podcast, and that on the surface that sounds like we're going to talk finances and the markets and all that kind of jazz, but that is not what this podcast is about. Particularly this episode, because you are someone who has just always interested me. Everything you touch seems to turn to gold in my eyes, and I wanted to dig into that and find out what makes you tick and how you got to that point, because people listening might be at a crossroads in their working life where they go, I'm so sick of the grind. How do I actually start doing something that I love rather than having to do something that I just happen to do that pays the bills? But let's wind it right back. You were raised on a farm in the Wairarapa with pretty basic Kiwi upbringing, right? It was a good rural farm upbringing.
Yeah, absolutely. Rural farm upbringing, and I used to hop on the school bus in the morning and travel 40 minutes into Masterton each day and 40 minutes back, and then I was only, I guess it was 9 when I went to boarding school, so wow. I went at a relatively early age because of the travel and bits and pieces, and would come home every sort of 3 weeks for an exit for one night, and then obviously the holidays, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And I was actually, we were all adopted, and my two older sisters, I guess my parents kept adopting till they got a boy, and that was me. And I was expected to take over the farm. That's why they, kept adopting children till they got a boy. And so while I went to boarding school, etc., if you're an only son from a farming background, it was just presumed you would hop in those boots and carry on.
That was your calling.
Yeah. There was no career guidance, nothing, not a question at all asked if I'd like to actually do something else. And so I just did that, and I left school and I went farming, and it just so happened my parents separated while I was about a year into it, and I had this sort of epiphany of, geez, I actually don't like this at all and don't need to do it, and sold my 2 dogs and moved to the city.
And so back to the childhood for a second. Did you have lots? Was there money to go around? Did you feel like you were well off as a kid?
Look, I think as farmers, I don't think we really wanted for much, but certainly I worked on the farm from a very early age, and I think that instilled, the understanding, the value of an earned dollar. My first sort of foray into earning money, I would have been probably 9 or 10, and during, I guess it was the August holidays when it was lambing, I'd hop on the horse and ride around the farm and pick up dead lambs, and they were worth $1 a piece. And I'd do that every day and put them out at the gate, and they'd be the slinky guy would come along and pick up all the dead lambs, and they'd turn those into hides. And so $1 a lamb was, I thought that was massive money. And then I went on to, and then the school, I got a bit older, and in the summer school holidays, I used to work in a shearing gang. As a sort of assistant presser, that's press the wool into bales, and used to travel with the shearing gang and stuff.
I know
in
those
the summer.
bales, the big
big mat. That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. Those massive ones. So that was sort of my farming, start and background. But I didn't as well. I loved the rural side of things, and everyone knows that I'm kind of a big nature guy and love the outdoors. But, sheep and cattle and mud and drenching and tagging and things wasn't really my cup of tea. So when I got the opportunity, I had that, as I say, that moment and thought, wow, actually, I'm going to move to the city and see what's on offer. And my first job was working at a place called the Magic Wok, and it was an Asian, I guess, you wouldn't call it a restaurant. It was in the bottom of the BNZ Centre. It was in the food court, and so I went from farming to making wontons and sweet and sour pork and what's that fried rice combination fried rice?
Yeah, of course.
The combo
Special combination.
So that's how the sort of the while I enjoyed the baking, and I used to do a bit of that on the farm because I had a sweet tooth, and there was no dairy down the road. So I kind of I'd always loved that creative side of things of baking, and so that's, I guess, where the start of thinking, maybe I can get a job and something to do with food.
Yeah, so what bridged the gap then between the Magic Wok and where you are now? Was there a formal education behind that, or did you kind of just wing it?
Well, I was at boarding school. I was never diagnosed, and I have never been, but I know I'm dyslexic. And my daughter Connie, she's dyslexic as well. And so I really struggled in the traditional classroom environment. I was second year, fifth at school. I was actually expelled in my final year, and I was lucky enough to have a few teachers that thought there was some good in me, and they tutored me, and I eventually actually got UE through sitting.
Why'd you get expelled?
Oh, well, I had a little business going.
Okay.
It's not really a business. Look, no, I got expelled for weed at school, and
how very entrepreneurial of you.
Yes, well, that was our we were selling loose joints and making some cash on the side. So maybe that's it.
Well, no judgments here. We're all fan of a side hustle on Where's My Money. So
yes.
Well, you got to make ends meet. That's amazing. Where's My Money is sponsored by Enable Me. Figuring out financials can be daunting. Master your money and stop living paycheck to paycheck. Get practical tips and expert advice on budgeting, debt management, and savings with Enable Me, helping Kiwis get money fit. So, you've gone from being expelled from school, having to repeat years, scraping in with UE, but then, again, successful restaurants in Wellington too, which was a pretty foodie place for a long time. Yeah, well, I as I say, I worked at the Magic Wok, and I really enjoyed the environment of a kitchen, and I felt that, and I think quite a few people that have dyslexia are actually really good with using their hands and that sort of thing, and I could pick things up relatively quickly, and I did that for a while, and then I thought, look, I should look into, hospitality is quite a big sort of vast field, and I thought, maybe I'll get into the hotel side of things. So I worked as a trainee manager. My next job was a trainee manager at the Shirella Motor Inn, beautiful,
which was a flag inn.
Yeah, it sounds like a classy joint.
Yeah, it was a real classy joint. It was just I guess an upmarket motel flag inn, just by the Botanical Gardens in Wellington. I did that for a year or so, and that was driving the minibus and checking people in and making beds and things, and then I thought, look, I need to learn the the booze side of things. So I got a job as an assistant manager again for at the Western Park Tavern, which was a pub, and that was a very successful pub, which had sort of a kind of high end bar, a kind of a student bar, and then a public bar, and did that for a while, enjoyed that, and then went overseas, and started travelling and cooking. So that's how that happened.
You can kind of see all the pieces of the current Al Brown coming together with your rural upbringing, which you see in so much of the content you create. You're so comfortable with whacking a carcass on a fire or grabbing a crab out of the ocean, and then the importance of hospitality and looking after your customers, which is so key in all your restaurants that we'll move on to soon. The booze behind it, which is such an important part, matching the booze with the food,
yes.
Just looking after people and making sure they're well fed, plus the skills of actually cooking the food.
Yeah,
I can see it all coming together.
Yeah, look, I haven't even really thought about it like that, but it I certainly have really fond memory. I sort of really enjoyed watching what food and, probably beers and gin and tonics. Those are the sort of drinks that my parents would be drinking, and would get a shandy occasionally. But I think I loved what, and probably that is the effect of alcohol, that it loosens people up and you see people having fun and plates of food, being passed around and that informality of all that. And I think it's a really easy thing to fall in love with, I think. And when you're not particularly bright in a sense of numbers or even spelling and that sort of thing, to find something or find a career or a job and something that you feel you might be able to excel in, because there isn't any of those sort of residual things on the side that you're nervous about or that are not your strong points. Find something that you think you can do and do it as well as you can.
Because there's no correct, there's no right or wrong. Spelling and math are either right or wrong.
Yes.
Food and looking after people, you kind of can't get wrong per se. Like, it's a feeling rather than a box to tick.
Well, that's right. That's right. And I think you can excel in it and in many different ways. And so I travelled and learnt to cook, and then it sounds like I'm some sort of reformed criminal, but I was deported from the States for working.
It wasn't the weed again, was it?
No, it wasn't. For working illegally this time, because I was just travelling by myself and wanting to learn, and I'd moved from restaurant to restaurant. And I was eventually caught up with, but I realised by that time that I really wanted to be a chef, I guess, and I managed to end up getting back into North America and doing culinary arts degree, and that was kind of like cooking boot camp.
Yeah. And
from there, I guess I never really looked back. I just really, really enjoyed being in a kitchen or being in an environment where. Kitchens, there's no seats, they're high octane, everyone's got a knife in their hand, there's fire everywhere. It's exciting stuff, and out of it, come these beautiful plates of food. And so there's a real creative side to it. It brings together a bunch of very different people, and I loved that sort of camaraderie of different race and creed and colour, etc. And that teamwork. I've always loved team, and feels like there's a sort of a security blanket around when you're working with other people, and you've all got each other's back. And I think feels like you can achieve a lot more when there's a bunch of you, working towards one thing.
There does seem to be a certain romance around working in a successful kitchen. Like you said, it's that high octane environment. There's flames, there's people shouting, but there's that team meal at the end, before the shift or after the shift, whichever kind of kitchen you're in. And it does seem like an episode of The Bear, that they're at each other for so long, but then they're still together at the end.
Well, that's right. I've only actually watched a little bit of the start of The Bear, and but I gather it's brilliant, and people get pretty hooked on it, and it is a bit like that. There's high pressure in a kitchen, and there's no dress rehearsals every service. It's always going to be different than the last, and it's kind of like a big puzzle, and as I say, being together, and they'll always be the last docket of the night, and that's the, you got through the battle, and hopefully it was a good night. I always sort of say that it's a bit like an orchestra, and hopefully everyone's in tune and harmonising, but occasionally the horn section doesn't turn up, and it can be a rough old night. For sure.
So you came back to Wellington, and you were there for quite a while, weren't you?
Yeah. I was in Wellington quite a while, and I got my culinary arts degree, and then I started. I worked in restaurants and had my first head chef positions, and then I went and I was asked to be the chef for the New Zealand Embassy in Brussels, so I went and did that for a while. And with our game, you keep learning, and because you never stop learning, but when you're learning to be a chef, you kind of want to move from restaurant to restaurant to, you learn as much as you can from this kitchen or this chef, and then you take another direction and learn what you like about this cuisine or this style, etc. And so you're building your repertoire. But when you eventually go, okay, it's time for me to have a crack at the game.
I've got the 10 strings on my bow. What do I turn it into?
Yes, and essentially, I say you don't stop learning, but you do stop going. You've got all the knowledge that you think that you need at that time, and then you start. I guess writing a menu around all the things that you like, and you've magpied from all those places that you've worked in, and then you start. And look, I sort of like the New Zealand way. I think we have that sort of underdog status that we're really good in so many things because we feel like if we're going to have a crack at it, we want to be as good as anyone in the world. And so I guess the high echelons of fine dining was where I was aiming because I had a culinary arts degree, and I thought that's what we should do. And I was Steve Logan, who had employed me at the Western Park Tavern the years before.
Oh, that's how that came about. Okay, cool.
Yeah, so that's where the Logan Brown came about. So the first restaurant was a fine dining restaurant, which is still going in Wellington.
And still iconic.
Yeah, and still iconic. And Steve's still at the helm doing it after nearly 30 years, I think. We opened in 96, so it's coming up to 30 years, which is extraordinary.
Oh, big 30th next year then. Great.
Yeah. But and I did that with Steve for 10 or 12 years, and then realised I didn't find the formality. I found the formality of fine dining quite restricting. It felt like the jacket didn't fit, and
a lot of rules.
Yeah, a lot of and sort of that. I suddenly, I guess, I realised that this whole New Zealanders, as New Zealanders, we're a pretty informal bunch, and when I think back to my love, my food memories, they were always in an informal environment. So when I left the partnership, and I actually we'd done a little bit of TV by then, and a show called Hunger for the Wild, and I wanted to have a crack at putting some recipe books together, and so I started doing that, but then got the nod to come up to Auckland and to open a restaurant, and so I guess I thought, well, I didn't actually want to do a restaurant again, but then I started thinking, oh, well, if I did do one, what would that be about? And I kept on thinking about my memories of the good times that I always could remember around food and beverage, and it was always, it kept coming back to me, was the sort of the campground, the batch, the crib, the marae, all these informal, wonderful places that are a part of our DNA, really,
and all the things you couldn't really bring to life at Logan Brown in the way that you
not
wanted
at all,
to. Yeah.
Not at all. And it's I always say it sounds blasphemy. How do you commercialize something that's so dear to our hearts? But and that's what Depot was about in Auckland, and we did it. I just kept my head down, and we had the mismatched cutlery and the tin cups, and
drinking red wine out of a tumbler.
Wine out of a tumbler, and the wine came out of a tap, and everything cooked over charcoal or in a wood-fired oven, and opening oysters and shellfish live, and struck a chord, and I guess it felt slightly risky. I was certainly very nervous moving from Wellington to the big city, to Auckland, and I was just determined to keep my head down. I thought I had, I thought I could, I thought it was a great idea, even though it was different to we hadn't really, I don't think as a country, explored that informality to such an extent. And, one of the big lessons I learned was, you reap what you sow, and we, because we were no reservations as well, and we kicked off with a hiss and a roar, and it was just before the 11 World Cup rugby, and we had queues out the door very, very quickly, and there was a few Aucklanders that turned up with the, don't you know who we are, and we were, no we don't, it'll be 40 minutes, and Fantastic. They never came back, but the people that loved the informality and didn't have to eat at 7 or 7:30, they came along for the entertainment and the fun, and as I say, we just it created a I guess just this, the reaping what you sow. We're just the type of service and who we were and what we were putting out there, and it was it was kind of fun and a little bit rough around the edges. Probably still is, but people feel comfortable in that environment.
You walk into that restaurant, and it is just so different to anywhere else. It has got something that you cannot recreate anywhere else.
It is. I always say, if you have a depot and if you're in hospitality, you're very, very fortunate. But there's so many wonderful restaurants in this country that I don't think we celebrate enough, that have been, as you say, the Logan Browns, the Borcott Streets. I used to. My apartment was near Tanuku's Cave, the top of Queen Street.
Another iconic place?
Yeah.
All iconic for their own reasons, right?
Yeah. And that people are in our game, and if they're still in our game, and especially through this sort of environment, they're doing something right, which is, and I think we should, definitely tip our caps or our hats to them.
So how long did Depot exist on its own before the Federal Deli came into the picture?
Federal Deli came, I guess, about 2 years later.
The Fed, we can call it
the Fed. And that was because in my travels, I lived in New York and Montreal. North America was my sort of place that I loved, and I fell in love with the Jewish food scene. Yeah, not Jewish, but I loved those delis, and the informality again, I think, was the thing that was the hook for me, and sort of humble food, but delicious and informal. And I sort of felt like it was Depot's Northern Hemisphere first cousin, if there was such a thing. And
which is beautifully poetic, because they are right next to each other. They share toilets, they are right next to each other, but so different.
They are so different. Yeah. And people that dine at Depot don't really dine at the Fed, and people at the Fed same don't really dine at Depot. So while they are both informal gaffs, they do attract different clientele, which is probably a really good thing, I think, especially in a small country. We don't have a huge population, so you need to be. And that's what I loved about moving to Auckland, was that it had a population that was big enough that you could be busy every night. In lots of the provinces and smaller cities, you can be busy, Thursday, Friday, Saturday night, but there's still 4 days in the week where you're not, and essentially you got half a business, I reckon.
Is that the reason we haven't seen Depot 2 and the Fed 2?
Yeah, well, it's not the only reason, and I get asked all the time, you should put one of these here and one of those there, but I like one of everything. Right. I like it. Well, different. I mean, when I say that, but I have Best Ugly Bagels, which we have 7 or 8 of those.
Is it up to 7 or 8 now? Far out. That's grown really quickly. Yeah,
it's just in the North Island. Yeah. But the Depot and the Fed, they're special places, I think, and if you go and suddenly open one in Queenstown, then you're up for comparison, and people are going, oh, it's not as good as the one in Auckland, or this or that, and so I'm always very happy with my lot. I've got two amazing little restaurants. I don't want any more.
You don't want any more?
Well, I mean, I never say never. If I got the opportunity, maybe there's one more in me.
What would it be? What would if you had to open your third to create the crown jewels of unique Al Brown dining
Well,
experiences?
it would be informal in one way or another. I think maybe you can still do informal and take it up a little notch. So while it'll always be a stemless glass of wine, it mightn't be a tumbler. It might be something that's just a little bit smarter, but.
I've always thought the gap that you should be filling is the big Italian sandwiches, the New York style Italian, with like provolone, those.
Yeah, like the muffalata.
And God.
Yeah.
Or
with olives and layers of provolone. And,
olive oil and balsamic. Yeah.
You see all those on the internet.
Oh my God, TikTok, that's my feed is just those sandwiches and I'm not angry at it.
So good though.
Yeah.
So good. Beautiful bread. Look, you could get carried. There's so many things that I'd like to do and
you still got time?
Yeah, I've turned 60 this year. Still got a few years of hospitality in me yet for sure. But it's been a great ride and I've really, really enjoyed it and in a whole lot of ways. And
well, you're not slowing down, are you? I mean, you still work hospo on a Tuesday at Depot, don't you?
Yeah, I'll be on the floor at 6 tonight. Yeah.
You're still waiting tables. I love that. It's similar to old Greg Foran in New Zealand, who's still pours water on the plane between Auckland and Wellington. There is something admirable about that.
I actually really love it. It's funny. I wake up on Tuesdays and I go, got to work tonight, so it's going to be a long day. But as soon as I get there, there's something incredibly energizing about being there. I'm super proud of it. I love my staff. My staff are. All the people I work with are amazing and they are like a second family because you spend so much time with them. But to be sort of a touch point for the brand and to serve people and meet people and work with the staff, meet the new staff, taste the food, talk to the chefs, just think it's simple stuff but really important for me and I think that's part of my success is this approachability and that I can enjoy talking to a high court judge as much as talking to a freezing worker or anyone else, Well,
so. You do carry a certain amount of gravitas, I guess, because you do have the books and the TV shows and, you are a bit of a star, so it must be a bit of a rush for people to meet you when they do come in if they've had
look, it's a weird thing. Look, it's a weird thing. I don't know, I can't stand the word celebrity. I can't stand being called celebrity chef. I don't even like being called a chef in the sense, I feel I'm a pretty good cook and I feel like I can cook better than a lot of people. But I've always wanted to do lots of things and so hence the other bits and pieces on the side and different projects and that's what sort of keeps it interesting for me.
You mentioned in the email when I was trying to get you on the pod and you were like, oh no, it took a couple of emails to get you around. You said that your superpower is surrounding yourself with the people that make you look good, the people that are clever, trustworthy. Yeah. How do you spot those people? Have you got a certain filter you put them through or do you kind of just know?
I think it's a really good question and I think I think sense of humour has a lot to do with it. And values, those sorts of things. And once you create that environment, and I think I'm very, luck probably had something to do with it in the beginning, but it gets back to sort of that reaping what you sow and all, whether you're in Depot or the Fed or Best Ugly or you're working on the sauces or everyone sort of feels like they're in the same team. So once you start creating a culture, I think, and that's the big thing, that you just keep working on that culture. And because when you start a restaurant, of course, you'll have, 40 people maybe working for you and you'll probably have 10 really goodies, 20 middle, just like life really. And,
that's right.
And the last quarter probably not great. Yeah. And so it takes a lot of time to get rid and just get better and better and better. But if you spend time on the culture and getting that right and looking after people like you enjoy being looked after, if you employ someone that slips through that isn't probably the right sort of employee, I don't need to get rid of them. The staff, they just don't fit in that environment. Yeah. At Depot, if I'm standing there talking to people after I've cleared their table, and talking to them about, would they like some pudding or dessert. Anyone who's on the floor will just sweep up and pick up the plates from me so I can continue to talk. That happens everywhere. That's and I'll do that to a junior, etc. So that being in the, first thing I do when I walk in is take the rubbish out. That's in front of the customers. That's in front of the staff. They're just little things. But I think that it just really sets the value proposition around team, and no one's better than anyone else. Our dishwasher, if a plate of food comes back because the steak's overcooked or something has happened, or they said they thought they ordered the steak but they'd ordered the fish or something, that dish will be offered immediately to the porter or the dishwasher. So they're standing there in the heat and the sweaty pots and pans and
hands on the water for hours.
Just going for it for hours and hours on end. And if you don't have someone that's great at that, so it's those sorts of things about that everyone is as important as everyone, and everyone's got a voice, and we've got two ears and one mouth. We try and really put that sense of listening is really important, and the other thing that I really try and instill is that asking for help is an absolute strength.
Totally.
And having that ability to I'm constantly asking for help and being asked for help, and of course when you're asked for help, it's actually a bit of an ego trip. It's that someone's asking you for your help or your knowledge, or can you, and there's something really wonderful about being able to help as well.
Oh, I'm so stoked. I always see you on TV or whatever, and I thought, I wonder if he's a good guy. You're a genuinely good guy, so that's great. It's enough being the guy behind a bunch of things. You're the guy behind the Fed. You're the guy behind Best Ugly. You're the guy behind Depot. All of a sudden, you're the guy on something. It's your name and your face on mustard, ketchup, olive oil, the bagels themselves when they go into the stores. You've got however many other sauces came out. You've got the cookbooks. You've got the coffee. You've got
so makes me feel
the tipping point wines.
Yeah.
How do you decide what to put your name to? Is it a bit of that gut feel that we were talking about before? Is it opportunity? Is it good timing? What?
It's sort of it's funny. I think we're guilty actually, and that's sort of caught up with us. It's a double-edged sword, especially getting through COVID and now being in this position that we all find ourselves, not just hospitality but so many other industries. But so on one hand, I'm glad I've diversified and done other bits and pieces, because that's kind of helped us get through. But it's also been, saying yes to everything. Again, it's probably a little bit ego driven, but if you achieve and you do something and you do it with people, it gives you this, I guess, confidence to do another thing. And I love design. I'm a big plotter and schemer. And so, to answer your question, it's not everything. I get asked to do lots of things, but it's things that will fit with the brand. And the brand, and even talking about the brand, feels a bit weird in a sense.
Because the brand is you. It's your face and your name. You are the brand.
But it is, I'm constantly trying to wave this, this informality flag out there that, yes, that's the brand, but it's not highfalutin. The sauce is in a squeezy bottle. It's got a funny name. It's Simply Red, or it's Old Yellow, or it's Ginger Ninja. The wine's in a different shaped bottle, and there's a charity connected to each varietal. The coffee is Good Joe. So they're all have. And look, we talk about the brand being, and this sounds a bit. I don't know. I always get embarrassed talking about the brand or whatever. But we talked about. I guess we like to think that we're everyday premium. So we're not too highfalutin. We're not too lowbrow. We're kind of in the middle. And again, when it gets back to the population of the country, which is a small population, you want to be. If you're making products, you want as many people to consume them as possible, so they have to be approachable. And I'm hoping that it's the signature of my character on there, and I'm very proud. They have to be good products. Like when we did Tipping Point Wine, Constellation Brands came to me and said, would you like to make some wine? And that's kind of like, duh.
Hell yeah, go and sign me up.
I've been waiting 50 years for this, or 55
It's
years for
about
this
time.
moment, that someone knocked on my door, because I love wine. I'm not a beer drinker at all. And anyway, again, to be able to wave that informality flag. And so that company has been incredible, but there's a huge amount of trust in that too, that they identified the informality. They approached me, and look, when I say I make wine, I get to hold hands with the winemaker when we do the blending, and so that's what I can bring, I guess, is my palate, which is okay, I guess, and I know what I like.
But then it gets associated with your world. That again, it's the brand, it's the Old Brown brand, and I'm not sure what it is, and maybe we've touched on it now that you've kind of explained what it is. It's that informality, it's that relatable Kiwi kind of down to earth, nuts and bolts, number 8 why kind of mentality, but it still feels premium. Maybe that's what connects with me, but every single thing you release, for some reason, I want it. Like, I want to try the new sauce. I want to try the new thing on the menu at the Fed. If there's something new on the menu this week, I'll be pissed off when I can't get a table. I have to try the Tipping Point wine. I need to read all the books, and when I'm bored, I'll reread them. Does it surprise you that your brand has, maybe I'm the number one fan.
You're A-class.
but does it surprise you that what you have created, and your team obviously as well, connects with people on such an emotional level?
Look, I'm thrilled that it does, and I think it gets back to the team thing, and I've been working with the same graphic designer for 30 years, Gary Stewart, and so and the same architects and designers, and Jeremy, my half brother, who I only met when I was 30. Now he runs the whole business, everything. Danae, our accountant, and they're all partners in the business. So I think we mentioned it earlier. I don't know. I think I'm good at surrounding myself with really clever people, and I understand my limits. And while I love design and think I've got a good eye and that sort of thing, but I need to be with people who are really designers, that can kind of get a picture of what I'm talking about, or taking it to a higher and more preferred level, I guess.
You're the conductor in that sense. You can't play the violin, but you can tell someone else had a place in damn good violin.
Yes, and I'm stoked that people love the products, and I think that the wine's not too highfalutin, it's bloody delicious. While the sauce is better than Heinz ketchup, it's not. It's not something. I never want to make something that becomes a culinary gift. I want something that people are going to, while they're waiting in the car park at the supermarket, they're going to rip the top off it and have a hoon.
Because it's informal and it's yum, and that's all you kind of.
And it's generosity is a word we haven't used as well, and I think that's a big part of hospitality. And when you go to depot and lots of places, will. If I'm waiting on tables tonight and I ask would they like to start with some oysters or some raw, and invariably there'll be three out of the 4 that will say yes please, and then one person will have a face like a bent sand shoe, and that'll be and I'll always ask, is it for religious reasons, or are you allergic to shellfish, and more often than not it's just that they've had an oyster that was shucked 5 days ago out of a plastic bottle, served warm on a piece of bread. Now if you think that's what an oyster tastes like,
that is not the Kiwi dream.
That is not. But so I'll go and open and this one's on me, and it's that, that's the generosity. It's that. So people don't, I think, struggle with, we can't give away all of our food, but giving away an oyster here and a clam there and a glass of wine here, I mean, it just comes back in spades. It's just a really natural thing for me, and I think that for my when I'm looking after tables at night, I'll quite often say thanks for waiting if they've been waiting, and I'll wait on you now, and would you like me to order for you? And that we do this with large tables quite often because it's easier in a lot of ways, and because I'm Al and I'm sort of am I am, but I'll always say, look, okay, well I'll feed you tonight, but the only rule is you don't pay for anything you don't like. And you see people kind of look at each other and like, what is he? Do you know what he just said? And then I'll always follow it up with, but you have to leave it on the side of your plate like a child, and because you can't eat it all and then say I didn't like it.
Yeah.
So, but it's that sort of belief in your food, making people feel at ease. I think, when you walk into depot, you get a glass of water and some koha immediately. If you go to Best Ugly and you get an order, they ask your name and they shout your order out, and they ask your name when your order's ready. And so there's just little personal touches that I think go a hell of a long way to make a great experience.
Do you feel successful? Does it feel like you've climbed the mountain of success, and you
Look, I think it's been, I said before we started, everyone sort of looks at all the shiny side of things, but there's been a lot of sacrifice to get there and a lot of hard work, and I'm very proud of what I've done and what I've achieved, and certainly and the thing about doing it with a team is there's just so many people that you can share that feeling with, and that they're a big part of it, so they're equally proud of the success that they've had being part of it. I guess I think one of the best. I think we don't look back enough, and one of my favourite, certainly favourite book to write was the Depot book, which was a biography of a restaurant, and that was exposing all the people and talking about all the people that came along for the ride, and really giving people the insight on what a restaurant's all about. So yes, I'm excited or thrilled with what I've achieved, but it's still really, really hard going, and maybe 6 years ago, pre-COVID, I would have things were going pretty well.
Yeah.
But since then, as our bagel business, and we, as I say, we've got 7 or 8 of those. They're a breakfast lunch offering, and they're in the middle of the cities, and people are working from home.
Yeah.
30%, 40% working from home. That comes off our bottom line immediately before you even start talking about costs of living and rent and everything else. So while it looks amazing, and if you can say you have 8 of those, so they're only turning it, we're really holding on in a few of these businesses. But as I mentioned, I guess I'm lucky, we've got the sauces and we've got the wine, so we've got the risk spread a little bit, and some have helped get the others through, and it's been a hard yakka, but it's still great. It's still great. It's still I think New Zealand's just the greatest country in the world, and while we've got lots of problems and bits and pieces, it's still the ability to catch a fish off a wharf or pick some watercress or all these amazing things that we can do. I certainly wouldn't live anywhere else, and it's lovely to be sort of part of that and really waving again. I keep talking about our informality. I think it's our ace card in the culinary deck. We should be doing so much more about and being so proud of that. Is that we do informality better than anyone else, even better than the Aussies, I reckon.
Is that what keeps you motivated in terms of that unique message you want to spread, or is it the creative process? Is it the people? What keeps you going?
I think it's a bit of all those things. But I think I really want people to understand and realise that what we do here in a country that comes naturally to us, whether we're digging pippies at low tide and cooking them over some corrugated iron with a bit of sand in them. Those experiences, no one in the world gets to do that sort of thing. And it's so, and informality is just as hard to do as formality, because if you, certainly in a restaurant environment, a depot looks really relaxed, and it is kind of chaotic at times, but we never run out of tongs. We never run out, while it's harder to look relaxed unless you're bloody organised.
Yeah, it has to be a well-oiled machine.
Yeah, it has
right?
to, so it's like the duck going across the pond, isn't it, with the legs that are paddling flat out underneath, but it's just gliding. So yeah, that's sort of how I feel about it.
I'm such a townie. You talk about all these cool experiences, cooking pippies on a piece of corrugated iron or slapping a goat on charcoal somewhere.
Dragging a net for a fountain. Look, we can all do it. You can do it. That's the thing. Everyone can do it. And then lots of, I think, it's a little bit like doing the Hunger for the Wild series. It was a very popular series here, but it was so popular with expats overseas, because they were saying, watch this. This is how I grew up. This is how we grew up. And we all have access to a batch or to someone's, the lakes, the rivers, and people used to come up to me and say, we'd love you to film, but we wouldn't want you to show the outline of the hills in case anyone thought, that they knew where it was. But, the beauty of that is that people really take pride in the places that they've grown up as families and holidays. And they're everywhere. They are everywhere, and that's the sort of thing that I think we just need to not become is apathetic about. Just this. Don't take it for granted. No one else has what we have.
Thank you for all of this. This has been so inspiring just to hear how you became you and what creates this brand and this world, and it is quite mind-blowing sitting with you and hearing about it all, and I really appreciate your time. I thought I'd finish with a couple of quick fire questions just to see what you think. What was the first big splurge you remember once you started earning money and the business was cranking? What was your first big spend?
At Logan Brown, I bought Steve and I guess we must have been 3 or 4 years in. Steve bought a second-hand Mercedes, and I bought a Land Rover a Discovery, which I thought at the time was just the absolute bee's knees, but it was actually a piece of, God, so many things went wrong with that. But that was that was the first splurge, and then and I'll talk about a few, because I think you should be able to, if you work hard, that you should be able to get some things that you can afford to do through that hard work. And
what's the point of this life, right? If we can't enjoy it while we do it.
That's right. And as I say, I've always been a homeboy, but I always, as a kid, used to get the boat magazines. The ones with the sort of newspaper and the newspaper print in the middle, and I'd always go to the back and go to all the launches in the boats. And when I moved to Auckland and we got depot going and things were going well, I got the opportunity to buy a lovely old Oliver and Gilpin, Cowrie, an old game boat, and it wasn't anything flash like the big ones that you see down at West Haven, but it was a lovely old thing that went about 7 or 8 knots, and it became our batch. That was our first real batch as a family, and we had so much fun.
There's a lot of past tense in this, though. You're saying was and had. Is it
actually, yeah. So we had Nautilus for I guess 11 years, and I now am lucky enough to have a property up north in Whananaki and on the water, and I get up there most weekends. And so I sold everything to get that little bit of property, and I love the far north. I love the whole country, but the far north is really, really special.
I've seen snippets of it on social media, and you do seem like you're right at home there. You can pop out and grab the herbs that you need for
I do a lot of growing. Growing is a new thing for me. It sort of started in the last 3 or 4 years, and I've just because I hunted and gathered and cooked and prepared and baked and roasted and did all that, but I never did any growing, and I just realised how much I missed out on the ability to dig potatoes or kumara, or go and pick herbs and lettuces and grow tomatoes and strawberries. It's just so extraordinary, I reckon.
You make it look so easy, all of this.
Oh, I know. That's social media, though, isn't it?
True. I see 30 seconds of it.
You do see, but it is. I think again we can grow things in this country, and again, maybe that's the way to do it, and instead of buying so much, and if we all learn to grow, we can save ourselves a bunch of money there for sure.
What's the most valuable tool in your kitchen?
Oh, it's got to be a knife.
Good quality knife.
A good quality knife, and I'll give a plug here that Haydo, who I worked with for about 15 years, who was kind of my sous chef who travelled with me and made me look very, very good.
He's the guy with the tattoos that's in your test kitchen, right?
Yeah, well, he now has a brand called Champion Knives.
Oh, cool. And
he teaches people to make knives, and he makes the most beautiful knives. So a wonderful knife is a great knife. It's the workhorse in the kitchen. Next would be a skillet. So knife and a pan.
Cast iron.
Cast for sure. The original. Yeah, the original.
What's one thing you would never cut corners on?
Look, I don't cut corners on. I try to be as authentic as possible, and even when we did the Fed, we took our designer and chef and architect, and we travelled to Montreal to look at and to New York to look at the Jewish delis, and if we were going to copy or covet something, we want to do it with authenticity and pay homage to the originals. And same with the bagel. Went up to Montreal to learn how to make bagels and meet the oven guys to bring them down to New Zealand to build the bagel ovens. And so that sort of, I just don't like cutting corners anywhere, to be honest. And maybe it's a sail and an anchor. Sometimes I think I'm a little bit, I have a perfectionist sort of side of me that I think sometimes, I talk about this all the time, and it's like if there were four of us sitting here and we had a plate of food and we had a piece of parsley, and you put the piece of parsley on first and you put it next to the pork chop, and now it's my turn. It doesn't look like it should go next to the pork chop. It should go next to the mashed potato. And then another person puts this. No one gives a fuck where the parsley is, And so I think that there is some things that, you can. I don't think it's cutting corners, but don't stress the little stuff so much.
Because that's part of the informality. But the authenticity of your places is certainly what brings them to life. Like the Fed couldn't have been the Fed if it didn't have the right colours, the right furniture, the staff in the right uniforms. Like every little detail's
the right pastrami.
That's right. Yeah. Certainly don't cut corners on the pastrami.
No, never.
And don't you ever remove the chicken salad sandwich.
No, I know. That's become quite legendary, hasn't it?
Oh my God. I can't
Have you had it toasted?
See, look, I'm in the fresh boat.
Yeah, I
have had it toasted.
So
I know
I'm
the
in
answer.
the fresh boat. But
always fresh.
Great.
What's the best financial advice you've ever been given?
Oh, the best financial advice. Like I think, how I feel about we talked about cutting corners. It's also about buying right. I don't like the word cheap. I'll never use the word cheap. I'll use the words value for money, perhaps. But like we just mentioned, a skillet. A skillet lasts you forever. A great knife will last you forever. I buy probably quite expensive shoes, but I resell them and I get a lot more life out of them. And being part of that Briscoe's 3 pans for $20 that you throw out every 18 months is bloody hopeless. So buy right and buy well, and it may seem expensive at the time, but at the end of the day, it'll be a lot cheaper in the long run.
Buy the best you can afford, and make sure it lasts.
Yeah, absolutely, and look after it.
And be a mensch.
And what?
And be a mensch.
Yes.
I know that. I've read that a number of times. Hey, thank you so much. I've really enjoyed this chat. I know it's gone for an hour and you probably weren't expecting to yarn with a stranger for an hour.
I rave and I get off on sidetracked and segues and stuff. So I hope the listeners and get something out of it.
But thanks for what you've brought to New Zealand and for helping to continue to put New Zealand on the world map, because I think what you've done is iconic and represents New Zealand in such a special way. So thank you.
Well, it's been a real pleasure. So thanks for having me on.
Huge thanks to Al Brown for letting me pick his brain and find out a little more about what makes him and his businesses tick. You can check out his full range of really cool stuff to buy at albrown.co.nz, including his new kids book called Hooked, that I did not mention in the interview at all. Sorry, Al. I will buy the book for my kids, I promise. I'll see you next time, where I'll come back to asking that question, where's my money? Huge thanks to Enable Me for sponsoring this episode of Where's My Money. Navigating finances can be tricky. Take control of your finances and break the cycle of living paycheck to paycheck. Get tips and insights on budgeting, managing debt, and saving money with Enable Me, helping Kiwis get money fit.